Hi everyone, we are back with chapter 15. So we're finished talking about promotion, and now we're going to talk about globalization in this chapter, and then chapter 16 is sustainability. So no doubt you've talked about globalization in your other classes as well. Essentially just means that you operate in more than one country. And from that you gain a lot of opportunities because of the exposure and interaction with people from other cultures and other countries. And that gives you opportunities that would not be available to people who just operate in one country. But there are some concerns or issues. That is, there's different types of governments and currencies, um, also policies and regulations, and also trade barriers that might exist. Okay, so there's a bunch of international decisions, and a bunch of different decisions you have to make when you are marketing globally, when you have a global firm. So you have to look at the marketing environment. You have to make the decision whether or not you want to. When we talk about the marketing environment, is it viable to go in there? You have to decide whether or not you want to go global, and if you do, which markets you're going to enter, how you're going to do it, what the program will be, and deciding on what the organization will be. Okay, so looking at the global marketing, we're going through it. Let's just go back for a second here. So we're going to go through those one by one. Okay, so what you want to look at when you look at the global marketing environment, you want to see what the international trade system is like, what's the economic environment globally and also in the countries, what the legal environment is like, the cultural environment. Some countries, view women differently. People view families are viewed differently in terms of cultural or what people wear and all that kind of stuff. The political, legal environment, whether or not you'd be welcome, how strong their economy, and if there are any trade barriers. So let's talk about that. So trade barriers, any kind of tariffs or duties. Sometimes there's tariffs, sometimes there's duties. There's also quotas and exchange controls. There's also non-tariff issues. There might be some bias against another country coming in, changing in product standards. We see that, locally, certainly between product standards in our country versus, product standards in Canada. And what enforcement, what regulation enforcement is like. Okay, World Trade Organization. You often hear about that. It was established in 1995. It promotes world trade by reducing tariffs and removing trade barriers, so it's easier for people to share things from country to country. And it establishes rules for international trade. It might impose some trade sanctions or restrictions. Another word for sanctions, restrictions, and helps to mediate, or when we say mediate, resolve any kind of trade disputes. Okay, so there's some regional free trade zones. Of course, one of the most well-known one, of course, is the European Union, which is going through changes. So there's NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Central American Free Trade Agreement, and South American nations as well. Those are just some regional trade zones. So it's free trade between country borders to increase the flow of goods between two countries, or two or more countries. All right. So when you want to talk about the economic environment, there are a variety of different types of industrial structures. So one is subsistence economies, and that's what we try to think of, like people. And there are people who exist like this too, that are just trying to keep going. They're just trying to stay alive. They're just trying to stay one step ahead of their next bill. Raw material exporting economies are ones that rely on one raw material to export. So, for example, one or more raw materials to export, and that's what they have. Brazil, for example, with wood, and Canada also has a big wood trade, or precious metals, of course, oil, and that kind of thing. So that's to be a raw material exporting company. Emerging economies that are just in the growth stage right now and slowly coming into their own and being financially stable. And then industrial economies are ones that are fully industrialized and have very healthy, robust economies. America, for example, the United States is an industrial economy. You also are interested in income distribution. So is it, some countries have a very wide distribution of wealth, so everyone's able to buy things. Some countries, people are either very rich or very poor. So what's the income distribution? Okay, political legal environment that you're interested in. So how friendly are they to buying things internationally? What's the government like? Is it easy to get through the government? Every government is different. Is it easy to do business with them? How stable is the political environment? Are they changing? Do they have a system, a very organized system such as we have in our country, where the rules are, spelled out and we understand what's going to happen? And, every 4 years we get a new president, and every 6 years we get new state senators, U.S. senators, that kind of thing. So stability, is there that kind of thing. Okay, monetary regulations, of course, how the dollar, how they decide on the value of their dollar, and interest rates and that kind of thing. And then also how they participate in international trade. Okay, and then culture, of course, is a really important and vital issue in your marketing strategy. It's important to understand cultural nuances, because you want to make sure you don't make any mistakes in terms of what your product, how you're advertising your product, the message you're sending, the people you're using, the settings, that kind of thing. And you also want to be able to take advantage of any kind of cross-cultural experiences or cross-cultural opportunities that might exist. So the one famous story about international marketing is some car names for might have one meaning in one country and another meaning in another country, that kind of thing. Or even a product name might have one meaning here, but it translates differently in another industry or another country. Okay, so why deciding whether or not you're going to go global? There are some things that will impact you. So will there be an impact? Will there be too much of an impact on the home market if with global competition, people coming in from the outside? Will you be able to expand your customer base enough to make it worthwhile? Are there good opportunities for growth? So when a company is deciding, they should decide what their objectives are. Why is it that they want to go into the other countries? Is it to expand their market base? Is it to offer new products? What is it? How many sales do they want to make? Do they really want to almost be bigger in another country than their own country, or do they just want to increase sales a little bit? Do they want to take advantage of certain partnership opportunities in other countries, that kind of thing? Or is there a product that they that they can sell, but they can't sell in one country, but they can sell in another country due to changes in regulations? So how much they want to sell, how many countries they want to go into, what type of countries they want to go into. Do they want to go into emerging markets, or are they interested? So some emerging markets would be Central and South America. Some Asian countries would be considered emerging markets. And so what kind of countries do they want to go into? Do they want to go into countries that have a growing food industry or a growing farming industry? How does their product fit in with that other culture or country? And then you want to go and you want to be able to evaluate each market and decide. Okay, so let's look at some ways to evaluate indicators of market potential. Demographic characteristics: how well educated are the people? What's the population size? And the size, and also size, growth, and age. Excuse me. Geographic characteristics in terms of climate and the size of the country. Transportation, Do they have the roads and the bridges to get your product from point A to point B? Where do most of the people live, in rural areas or urban areas? Economic factors, GDP, the gross domestic product, and growth. Is it a growing economy? The income distribution, we talked about that. The industrial infrastructure, so are you going to need to get products or from other raw materials from other people in the country, and will they be available to you? What are the natural resources? Let's say you need a lot of water for your manufacturing. Will you be able to get that water? And then are there financial opportunities, or are there banks that will fund you? And are people who can actually be able to do the work? Okay, and then social cultural factors, consumer lifestyles, beliefs and values, how people do business, what the social norms are. What is it that how do people live? How what's their day like? For example, in our country, we have a 9 to 5, 8 to 4, 8 to 5, work day for most people. People eat breakfast in the morning, lunch at we have an hour for lunch, and we eat dinner at home. Some countries don't do it that way. Some countries have their big meal in the middle of the day, and would that fit in with the products you're selling, that kind of thing. So how is it that the culture works? And it also can be issues with attitude towards age, attitude towards gender, family, that kind of thing. Languages, what language do they speak? And some countries have multiple languages in one country. Switzerland, for example, they have 3 languages. There are different dialects in different regions of China, for example, that kind of thing. So you want to think about those things. Then political and legal factors. We talked about this a little bit. Political stability. Is the government friendly towards global trade? How easy is it to work through the government, to get licenses and permits and that kind of thing? And then what are the regulations? So a lot of times, it's specific to marketing. McCann Erickson is a well-known advertising firm. They're trying to break into the Central and South American markets. And so what they did was they sent people down. They were specifically interested in food, how people approached food. So they sent some of their top sales executives to Central America to actually live with a family for a week. So, 5, 6 different account executives went down and lived with 5 different families and watched what they did, how they made their decision, their attitude towards food. And then from that, they were able to better service their customers in terms of marketing marketing food to them. What they found out, for us in our country, food is sort of entertainment and it's a treat, and there's plenty of supply for it. Whereas in some the Central American countries and other countries as well view food as a way to for nourishment and energy to get you through the day. So they would market it very differently. Okay, so market entry strategies. I think you talk about this. If you took Intro to Business, you talked about it in there. I believe you also talk about it in management, and you may or may not talk about it in business law 2. So essentially, there are 3 different general options, and they go from the least amount of commitment and risk to the most, and also profit potential. So the first is exporting, import-export. All you need is to a certain extent, a computer and a telephone. You might not even need a telephone, but you import-export products. You might not even ever take title to them. Another one is joint venturing. There's a lot of benefits to joint venturing in terms of being able to partner with another country, partner with a business from another country who would understand all the regulations, that kind of thing, that can really help you out. So licensing is permission to sell a certain brand. Contract manufacturing, so you might go to China or other Asian countries and contract with a manufacturing company over there to produce your product. Management contracting, same kind of thing. And then joint ownership, so that Company A from the United States and Company B from Germany jointly own one portion of the business. So it's a kind of like 1 foot on the boat, 1 foot on the dock option, which can be very, very successful. Then direct investment, is when you actually own your own facilities, assembly and manufacturing facilities in the other country. high risk, but also high reward. Okay, so then you've got to decide what your marketing program is going to be. You can either do it standardized, which is so using the same marketing strategy and mix in all your markets, or adopting it, which is time consuming and costs more money, but can avoid some of those cultural mistakes that could provide embarrassment and decrease your sales. So it's if you adopt it, there's the expense could really be worth it in terms of engaging the customers. Okay, so there are a variety of different 5 global product and communication strategies. So the product, and we see the product on one side, the communications on the other. No change is straight extension. Adaptive communications. You can read that, product adaptation or dual adaptation. I'm sorry, and then you might develop a whole new product for a certain area. A new brand, a new type of cereal because of people's taste preferences, or different types of milk, or whatever it may be. Okay, and then price considerations. Again, you want to take everything into effect in terms of what the economy is like, and maybe increase costs. You might want to set a global price, or you're going to take into effect increased costs due to production or distribution, or taxes or tariffs that need to be paid, or differences in taxes and that kind of thing. Okay, then there's this whole idea of the whole channel concept for international marketing. So it's the global value delivery network as opposed to the regular value delivery network that we talked about before. That basically you just need to set up you need to understand what the distribution system is and what the best way is to go about that. Okay. So just sort of wrap everything up. You have to decide how much their market strategy should be adapted. And then you either go the standardized or adapted marketing strategy. The adapting costs more, but usually can get you a better, higher return. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It can be, partial modification, somewhat modification. You can, one of the prime examples too is we talked about McDonald's. So, in certain, McDonald's changes their menu in different countries based on what people's dietary habits are and what people's expectations are. And so, that can really be very helpful because, in certain countries where, people might not, eat meat as much as we do, or, don't, they don't want to eat, food fried in certain oils, but they will eat them fried in other oils, or, what kind of coffee they're used to drinking, that kind of thing. It can really make a big difference as to whether or not you make or break your global expansion. Okay, and then finally, these are some questions you want to answer when you go global. You want to do the same product, or the modified product, or a whole new product. The promotion message, you want to ask about the pricing, taking into consideration the economy and the demand, and also whether or not you have if the marketing channels are out there, the distributorships, the delivery systems, all those kinds of things that are out there to actually distribute your product. Will you be able to get it from point A to point B? Are there people there who can help you? Are the roads sufficient enough? Or the rail system? Is it's what's the safety of the product as it goes from one portion of the country to another? Okay, so that's it on chapter 15, globalization. Thanks, guys.